This video is brought to you by Saley. Stick around to hear more about the special offer they're providing to the entire upper echelon community. Everybody hates air travel. Actually, that's not true. Every sane person hates traveling by air in a sealed metal tube with 200 other people packed inside like sardines. Maybe it's the crying baby or the smell or the way that the airlines nickel and dime you at every single possible turn. Everybody has their own different reasons, but regardless of what that reason is, typical travel by air is not an enjoyable experience. Obviously, there are exceptions to this. If you have millions of dollars and you pay for the privilege of first class, or you take a private jet, for example, then the experience of flying gets a whole lot more easily bearable. But for the sake of clarity, today I'm talking about budget air travel. I'm talking about average experiences, economy class tickets, and the claustrophobic reality where being crammed into a space with as many other people as possible is the entire business model. It's called low-cost carrier, that's the official name, and it refers to airline companies like Spirit, Frontier, Ryanair, Southwest, and a whole bunch more all across the world. In terms of market size, according to Precedence Research, LCCs are projected to grow by a factor of 6 times over the next 9 years. But the real revelation here is that as of 2024, low-cost carriers already accounted for 33% of the entire air travel market in totality, while only comprising 15% of air travel companies. That's a ratio that matters because the obvious indication is that low-cost carriers are now serving a larger than average amount of air travel customers compared to other competing airlines, basically a 2-to-1 ratio. And they're doing this with a business footprint that is projected to rapidly expand over the next 10 years. In some ways, that can be a good thing. Accessibility, for example, financial accessibility, that is, means that more people than ever can go to more places across the globe. But when you start talking about comfort, safety, or accessibility in a physical sense, everything changes. Today, I want to focus on a very specific issue, which became a pretty big series of headlines again recently, and deep dive into the horrifying evolution of air travel, particularly when it comes to the concept of standing seats. Let's get started. A lot of people over the past week or so have probably seen headlines like this, quote, "Low-cost airlines to launch standing-only seats in 2026, end quote. Extremely definitive, right? The change is coming, and all sorts of different outlets began echoing that sentiment. Here's another one, quote, "From 2026, a few of Europe's low-cost airlines are planning to swap out some economy seats for standing seats," end quote. And just for the sake of demonstration, those weren't the only ones. In fact, the idea of standing-only seats became an international news story. But rather than simply commentating on the distasteful nature of that idea or capitalizing on the topic with a lazy half-page article, let's take a detailed look at what the story is, where it came from, and what they're actually trying to do. This entire thing, literally all of it, tracks back to a single Instagram post. May 19th, 2025, an account called Entrepreneurship Quote made a post claiming that budget airlines will launch standing-only seats in 2026 in order to increase capacity, which then spawned possibly hundreds of different articles from all sorts of news outlets all around the world. What I find curious is that this originating post doesn't cite a single source, fails to mention any specified names, and yet after it spurred a barrage of media headlines, one low-cost carrier in particular, Ryanair, came out and denied the claim that they would soon be offering stand-only tickets. I think that's strange, because while Ryanair is definitely one of the most prominent low-cost carriers in the whole world, if someone comes out and says unspecified companies are attempting to do this thing which you probably won't like, without naming any names, and then one specific company starts loudly protesting that claim more vocally than all the others, it makes me wonder why. Considering the subject matter for the video today is all about air travel, I think it's quite fitting that the video's sponsor is a product called Saley. Simple explanation here, Saley is an eSIM card application that helps you stay connected to the internet while traveling. I've used it myself, by the way, in Japan earlier this year. I went there for 3 weeks, so I can personally vouch for the service myself. But the bullet points would be that Saley is incredibly simple to install, effectively cheap compared to alternatives, and super convenient when it comes to saving time, privacy, and even ad blocking. There's a variety of global or regional plans. It's compatible with both Android and iOS devices, with 24/7 support available and a refund guarantee if your device isn't compatible. Very simple process. Just download the application, select a plan, install the eSIM, and follow the in-app instructions to activate it. That's it. After that, you have internet access on your mobile phone wherever it is that you decided to travel, without the previous hassle of physically buying a replacement SIM card at the airport. Funnily enough, it may be that airline travel itself is becoming more and more tedious over time, but data connectivity while traveling is getting easier and easier in that same time frame. If you use the link down below to download Saley, you can get a 15% discount on data plans with code Echelon at checkout. Again, link down below with code Echelon at checkout for 15% off Saley data plans today for traveling. Okay, back to it. A single Instagram post claims that standing seats will be implemented in 2026. After that, a deluge of media stories punctuate the online world, ultimately causing the world's largest LCC airline, Ryanair, to make a denial, an open denial. But what's the real story? Well, the real story is that airline companies absolutely will be implementing standing seat options, whether or not that happens in 2026, and they've been trying to do this for the past 19 years. The Instagram post, while failing to reference any specific sources, does pertain to an actual design. It was initially unveiled at the Aircraft Interiors Expo in 2018 by a company called Avio Interiors, but the design itself is called Skyrider 2.0. Supposedly, the seat design allows an airline to increase capacity by at least 20%. They're also apparently 50% lighter than their counterparts. But if you look at the promotional material that Avio Interiors brought to the convention, you can see that they're actually proposing that the entire plane be converted to this new format. A Boeing 737, for example, could add 48 more passengers this way, but that was just in 2018. If you dig a little bit deeper, the concept goes much further back than even that. In 2014, secured by a company called Airbus Operations, which is a French company, a patent was logged for what was called a seating device comprising a forward foldable backrest, which is really just a bicycle seat on a bar, it looks like. It's honestly horrifying when you look at the design patent itself, but we need to remember something here. Low-cost carriers, such as Ryanair, don't actually make the planes. They only operate them. On top of this, their entire business model hinges on the concept of maximum passengers, not quality of experience. Hence why 15% of the world's airline companies, the LCC ones that is, have 33% of all of the seats. Simplified, Ryanair doesn't make the planes, but they want maximum amounts of seating in the planes. And Airbus doesn't operate the planes, but they build them. And they want to sell as many as possible, obviously. Airbus holds the patent for what looks like the most uncomfortable airplane seat you can possibly think of, which in my opinion makes it abundantly clear that eventually we will be subjected to at least some version of saddle-type standing seats. But it gets even better. All the way back in 2010, Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary was proposing standing room-only sections of the plane, even suggesting that customers be charged $1.50 to use the fucking bathroom. But later on, in 2012, he spoke to ABC News and said something that's frankly unbelievable. Quote, "If you say to passengers it's 25 euros for the seat and €1 for the standing cabin, I guarantee we will sell the standing cabin first." End quote. Further down, after clarifying that standing room only seats would not provide passengers with seatbelts or safety harnesses of any kind, quote again, "You should be able to choose from a safety perspective. We're not talking about areas of huge turbulence around Europe." End quote. That was all the way back in 2012, but let's be clear about what's actually being discussed, okay? He's talking about having stand-only tickets that don't have seatbelts because we're not talking about areas of huge turbulence, apparently. But the most dangerous portions of an airplane flight, by far, okay, like way by far, have nothing to do with turbulence. Without question, the most dangerous two sections of a plane ride are takeoff and landing. It's not even close for that matter, okay? Not even remotely close. But let me just really drive that point home. A few months ago, early 2025, a Delta flight crashed on landing, rolling over completely, with 0 fatalities. This didn't happen because of turbulence, okay? It happened as the plane came in for landing, like most crashes always do. But the fact that there were 0 fatalities despite the plane completely flipping upside down and rolling is both miraculous and a testament to the fact that safety mechanisms or procedures genuinely do work. I want everyone watching this to sit here and legitimately try to picture the same scenario unfolding when some or all of that flight theoretically had standing-only ticket sections, where you straddle a bicycle seat with no seatbelt. And tell me with a straight face that the same type of crash would have had 0 fatalities in that situation. It's an actual joke. I said earlier that it's a bit strange when a post comes out without naming specific companies and then one specific company starts loudly protesting, and I stand by that assumption, because it turns out Ryanair has been trying to push for standing-only ticket options since at least 2010. Also, just to be clear, Tiger Airways, also in 2010, was allegedly considering stand-only options back then as well. And even as far back as 2006, Airbus, again, one of the main aerospace leaders that makes the planes and patented this abomination in 2014, let's keep that in mind, was quietly pitching Asian carriers, according to the New York Times at least, about a standing option where you lean against a backboard with a harness. Of course, Airbus came out and denied those claims immediately after, but having the full context of the situation in hindsight now, it's relatively clear that not one or two or three or five, but numerous different high profile aviation companies are actively pursuing the idea of standing seats, which it is an oxymoron. I know you can't really have a standing seat. It's just the easiest way to describe it. The craziest thing to think about is that pretty much everyone who weighs in on this debate, by and large, has a similar perspective. Standing would be fine on short flights, or some variation of that sentiment. But there's a pretty big elephant in the room, I think, because even the shortest commercial flights are not really an hour long. Sure, the actual air time could be just 1 hour, but when you factor in boarding, taxi, takeoff, landing, taxi again, then unload times, it's pretty difficult to picture any reasonable flight ever being less than 90 minutes or 2 hours. Ryanair, Spirit Airways, Southwest, Frontier, Zip Air, Tiger Airways, and the list goes on, right? There's a lot of them. All of these airlines and more predicate their business on quantity over quality, right? That's the whole premise of the whole thing. Meanwhile, even the actual manufacturing companies, like Airbus, are also attempting to normalize the concept, which means that without question, we will begin seeing standing-only sections for plane rides in the near future. Obviously, I can't tell you when that will happen precisely, or which particular airlines will be the first to do it. But I can tell you that much the same way that relative quality of air travel has systematically degraded over time, smaller seats, less amenities, that's a big one, more delays, etc., the same way that quality has gone down overall, the impending evolution of air travel is a conversion from sitting to standing for the sake of cramming people in like sardines and bottom line profit, which they've been trying to normalize for almost 2 decades. In the end, I think it's a fascinating story. Some random Instagram account makes a post with 0 cited sources using old information, and then the world's largest low-cost carrier comes out and says, "No, not us. That's not true at all," despite that same company's CEO having historically directly advocated multiple times prior for standing seats, no seatbelts, and even charging people to use the bathroom. Meanwhile, one of the leading aerospace manufacturers in the entire world has patented something even worse than what the Instagram post was looking at more than 10 years ago, making it clear that air travel is a consistently worsening product. Unless you're rich, then it's fine. That's it. That's the horrifying evolution, or rather, I guess, impending evolution of air travel. And yeah, that's it. If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below. The video sponsor, of course, Saley. Great for if you're traveling and want to stay connected with data plans, locals and Patreon, channel memberships, etc., etc. But I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, question everything, and have a nice night.